All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to June 23rd's MakerDAO community call. My name is David. I have the wonderful pleasure of hosting these things and keeping you lovely people up to date. So if you don't know already, we use this community call. Oh, man, this echo is so distracting. Sorry, I'm having some mic issues, but they will go away in just a second. Okay. So that should be fine. All right, so if you don't know about the community call already, we typically use this time to go over what's been happening at MakerDAO for the last week or so. And this week has been a little bit more tame, but there are quite a few interesting things going on. I'm going to paste the link to the agenda in the chat. And also, if you're watching the recording, the agenda should be in the description of the video. You can go to the June 23rd Japan. See this. This echo is messing me up. So yeah, so you can go to the June 23rd agenda and you could see all of the stuff I'm going to cover today, and you will be able to pretty much click on all of those links and explore for yourself. So definitely do that. But otherwise, I'm going to share my screen here in just a second, and we're going to get going. One thing though, I think we're going to have a guest in the coming week or two. Actually, towards the end of the call, I'll mention once I get confirmation. But all right, so let's share the screen. All right, sweet. So let me know if anybody is having any issues with the audio or with anything with Crowdcast. We are using this new platform, testing it out for a few weeks to see if it's better than Zoom or Google. Also, if you have a question, there's a ton of like really useful modules on the bottom. There's an ask a question, there's like a poll functionality, and there's also a call to action functionality. So definitely feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to save them and answer them as they come. Also, if you're interested in coming on with video and a microphone, just ask in the chat and I can invite you to do that. But otherwise, let's get going. So for governance, there are just a few TLDRs. The current executive vote that's happening right now expires on Thursday if it's not passed. This executive vote is to ratify all of the MIPS stuff that happened this month. So if you're not familiar with the way that the governance cycle at MakerDAO works, basically every single month, there's a 4-week process for getting MIPS proposed, voted in, and then finally accepted through the final executive vote. And since we are in week 4 of the June governance cycle, we're having this executive vote to ratify finally all the stuff we've been voting on this month. The proposal includes 6 different things. It includes one new MIP called Declarations of Intent. This allows the Maker governance to basically make a proposal like a work order and say, hey, we intend to pay this amount of money for a compensation report for vault victims of the Black Thursday thing, for example. Well, now the protocol will be able to kind of formally do that on chain, and it would be kind of a sign that MKR holders are the ones actually putting forward those intentions. And then also just some housekeeping. There were several amendments to a few of the MIPS, and also a sub-proposal that adds Cyrus and the risk team at the foundation as an official risk team of the Maker protocol. So this is all fairly standard. You can click in here and look at the details. I'm not going to cover the details of these amendments too much. But regardless, this is the only executive vote that has such a short time limit attached to it. So it's only valid for 4 days. So please, if you're an MKR voter and you agree with the MIPS that are being added, go show your support. The other TLDRs are that there's going to be another executive vote that's going to be coming out this coming Friday on June 26th. It's going to include, from what I heard, the removing of Psi completely from multi-collateral DAI, and also the Oracle-related changes that we had voted in last week through the governance polls, which include whitelisting several organizations and also adding several light feeds, or I think four different light feeds. So yeah, and that's also a little hint as to why there's a 4-day expiration. It's partly also because on Friday there's going to be at least this month there's going to be some housekeeping. And maybe should I talk about the removing from sign now? Nah, I'll cover it in a bit. This is just the quick TLDR points. And then the third one I have here is there's going to be technically a 1-week break in between governance cycles. So MKR voters, you could take a deep breath and not have to be too worried that you're missing stuff. But from June 29th to the 3rd, there's not going to be any MIP related stuff. And I think the governance call is going to be a little bit more loose and discussion oriented. So right now it's June 23rd. The end of the month comes on Tuesday the 30th. So that whole Monday the 29th through Friday the 3rd is kind of just a break week, which I found pretty cool. So I think we're going to be having those pretty regularly. Maybe one every couple months or so, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to cover the votes in this next section. These are the votes that are currently live. So as I said before, there's the executive vote that adds all of these various MIP things that we've been going through this governance cycle. There's also a governance poll for the base rate adjustment. So this has been a topic in the community for a little while. With the DAI price remaining floating above $1, I think that the community sentiment and based on the votes that are happening here, people are still voting to keep the base rate at 0%. But of course, there's a pretty small amount of MKR voting on it. So we will see what this looks like on Thursday. There's also a governance poll for the DSR spread adjustment. This is a bi-weekly poll. Every 2 weeks we vote on this, and basically it uses the base rate as the reference point, and then if there is a 0% spread, the base rate is 0, then the DSR is 0. If the base rate is like 1% and DSR spread is 0, then the DSR is 1%. So that's basically how it works. And currently also, I believe 0% is winning, which the DSR spread has been set at 0 pretty much for the last 3 months or so. And by the way, just a reminder, all of these governance polls last for 4 days. So they're going to be ending on Thursday, right at the same time the governance call starts. So just a heads up. Then there's also a number of community greenlight polls. So these polls happen right now. They're happening on the 4th week of the governance cycle, but actually there's an amendment in place to update the timing of the community greenlight polls so that they happen for 2 weeks, but they start on the 3rd week of the governance cycle. So that means that by the time the votes conclude, a brand new governance cycle begins. So this is just a bit more intuitive, a bit more neat, and ultimately it kind of works a lot better. So soon that's going to be passed, hopefully. So the greenlight polls for the different collateral types that are currently in the onboarding process are as follows. So there's one for Link, there's one for Whiskey Token, there's one for Engine, there's one for Pax Gold, there's one for Matic, and there's one for Aves Lend. And so these polls aren't 100% whether or not to add these collaterals to the Maker protocol. They're rather greenlight polls, so they let MKR holders express interest as to whether the domain teams should actually do domain work on any of these, or if they should. Or if they shouldn't, right? So if you had like a serious issue with Link, for example, and you voted no, while all these other proposals got yes, then the domain teams would take that into account and say, okay, well, it seems that the community likes these a lot better, so we should do the Oracle assessment review or the risk review for these first rather than Link. So it gives a bit of a signal to the domain teams what kind of work they should do. So yeah, if you are curious about any of these tokens and you want to be more informed before you make a vote, I linked all the collateral applications here. And also, if you actually go into a voting page, the collateral application is also there inside of the actual proposal. So yeah, should I wait for it to load? Nah. But you get the point. And feel free to ask any questions if you have them. But barring any questions, yeah, that's it for all the votes that are happening this week. What's more interesting, maybe not more interesting, maybe that's a bad way to say it, but there's a number of really interesting things going on in the MakerDAO forum. If you don't know about governance at a glance, I say this every week, but it's a really great maintained thread, 127 edits, of just all of kind of the most recent like, geez, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like current events. Yeah, you know how when you were in public school they had like a current events. Yeah, so this is like the current events of MakerDAO. So there's a 3-point summary. There's some active discussions. There's also these seeking consensus threads, which are on forum polls that the community participates in. There's ongoing initiatives and then a help wanted section. So there's a little bit for everybody if you're interested. But what I didn't know that I found out this week is actually that Long for Wisdom has been hard at work. So if you could see here, there's a few new pages. So there's actually a new tag for active signal request threads. So if you create one, you can add this tag and it'll add it to this filter. It'll be super useful. Also, there's a new ongoing initiatives, like an actual thread. So Long for Wisdom has a list of the active initiatives that are going on right now in the governance community, and also the inactive initiatives that kind of are either put on hold, they're bookshelved, or there's nobody really working on them anymore. So definitely check those out if you're interested in participating in any of them. And then also, I think Help Wanted links to a tag. So also super useful. I mean, we should probably take more advantage of this section, but regardless, really great thread to go to if you just want a quick snapshot and to look around the different threads that are going on. Yeah, so I already showed you guys governance initiatives, but that's a brand new page that I didn't see last week. As for the weekly MIPS update, Charles has been really awesome at posting these every single Monday. So he does a full review of the last week's activity, this week's activity, and then stuff that's coming up. So stuff that's coming up about the July governance cycle, and then just some other related stuff. And let me see if I have actually... Yeah, so it might be good to spend maybe like 2 or 3 minutes going through what's happening in the world of MIPS right now. So let me actually make this a little bit larger. So, all right. I wish I could show you guys my calendar, but I'm like not sharing my entire screen. I'm just sharing that window, so I will not show you my calendar. But either way, here's last week's activity. Monday, June 15th was technically the third week of the governance cycle in June. We had a monthly MIPS governance poll. It was submitted for these 6 proposals that are currently being voted on in the executive. 4 polls went to whitelisting oracles, and then like another 8 polls went out for appointing and proposing new light feeds. And regarding light feeds, it is actually really interesting, but there was a point in time when single collateral DAI, the oracles for single collateral DAI only had, I think, 13 or 14 different dark feeds, which were anonymous individuals who provided prices to the MakerDAO oracle. But now with the launch of MCD and also with like a ton of Nick's hard work, there's kind of a whole other side that's emerging, and it's these light feeds. They're organizations, they're public, and they publicly run feeds for Maker. And having this mix of light feeds and dark feeds is actually really synergistic, because because one group can't really collude against the other. Well, I'm not going to get too deep into the explanation. I highly suggest you listen to some of Nick's talks about this, but it's exciting because we're coming up on, I believe, with the addition of these light feeds, 24 different feeds. Yeah, almost 24 different feeds. And if you actually would like a list of these feeds, you can get it here and check them out. But it lists all of the addresses for the dark feeds and the light feeds. So it's pretty exciting that a ton of really great organizations in the space are participating in MakerDAO oracles and making them more robust and a better product for everybody in the space, basically. All right, so back to the MIPS update. So yeah, that's what happened last week. And then on Thursday's governance call, it was shown that the MIPS governance poll passed with 0 no votes. So everybody was in favor of the stuff that is being voted on right now. And yeah, and then the governance facilitators did their week 3 governance poll review and made sure that everything was kosher before letting these go to an executive vote. So for this week, which is the week we're currently in, as I mentioned, there's an executive vote up for 4 days. On Thursday, so this coming Thursday, the governance call is going to include a section where the governance facilitators are going to perform a governance cycle review. So if you're more interested in just like looking at MakerDAO governance from the perspective of the MIPS governance cycle, definitely join this coming meeting. So they're going to discuss what happened this cycle and then what's going to be coming up for the July governance cycle. And then for you MKR holders or community members that might be listening, even though the next governance cycle is technically like a couple weeks away, the formal submission period for any MIPS or sub-proposals or amendments is July 8th. So it's the end of the first week of the governance cycle. And if you have any proposals in progress, submitting them for review sooner rather than later is definitely good, because if the final version that you hope to get voted in isn't submitted by July 8th, then it's going to have to wait for the next month. Yeah, and then I cover a lot of the other stuff in this update here in this agenda, so let us move on. All right, cool. So as I mentioned, there is a proposal from, not really a proposal because everybody is kind of in agreement about the fact that this needs to happen, and it's going to go to an executive vote almost directly on Friday. But the idea behind removing Psi from MCD completely is purely just to do some house cleaning. Like Psi and single collateral DAI has been shut down. Psi is now a claim on ETH. One Psi can claim like a tiny bit of ETH. I forgot the exact number, but because MCD inherently had this migration tool, which was like a slightly modified CDP, that migration tool technically still exists in the code, along with like several other things. I think there's some Oracle related stuff that has to change. But basically, this is going to update the code for the Maker protocol to totally remove that migration tool, along with whatever other Psi related code stuff can be taken out. And this, of course, reduces like the code risk, and it's just good practice. So if you're curious about that, that's that. If you're curious about a place where you could find a status of a given collateral onboarding application, Long for Wisdom maintains this really, really wonderful page. Actually, this whole first post is great. It gives exactly the all of the different green light statuses, by the risk team, the Oracle team, smart contracts team, legal team, and it gives a bit of a status for what's going on with each of them, and links to the individual applications here as well. And then in the comments, he goes one by one for every single application and drops all the information that's necessary for an MKR voter. Yeah, so I already showed you guys a preview of this. So the list of feeds in the Maker protocol, pretty exciting. The summary of Thursday's risk and governance call is up. So if you don't have an hour and a half, definitely go and check it out. This thing is, in my opinion, like a work of art. But we have a great team of contributors who produce this every week. They listen in on the governance calls, they do the live notes, and then afterwards they use the recording to clean the notes and to add video anchors, cross-linking, like everything you need. So if you ever want to follow the governance call, but you don't really intend on participating live and you just want to get a review, these are posted pretty much by this time on Monday. So check those out if you're interested in reviewing the governance call. I mentioned last week, but I just want to reiterate, there's a couple of new categories in the forum threads. One is for proposal ideas. These are for discussions about ideas that aren't ready to be implemented as MIPS yet. So this whole section is like very good for the discussion stage of lots of ideas. And we previously didn't have a single place where all of that lived. So now there's a really comfortable forum tag where all that lives. And then likewise, we also, so Charles St. Louis also created a read-only category for polls and votes. So if you're interested what's going on with a given week in like the MIPS process, because there's a lot of like votes that happen, you'll be able to stay notified and understand what's going on by following this category. And this is brand spanking new, so there's not much in there right now. But yeah, it's dedicated to providing more awareness and notifications to people who participate in governance. All right, cool. So let's move on to the highlights from the community section. There's a ton of cool stuff that happened. Yeah, I missed this one page that was published to our community development portal, but there's a governance tools page. So if you're an MKR voter and you don't have all of these tools bookmarked like you should, just kidding, but you can go to this single page and it should be maintained quarterly, and you will be able to find kind of the most recent and useful third-party sites and analytics dashboards for helping you make decisions around your vote. So definitely super useful, and I think might have been Long for Wisdom or somebody else in the governance community that put this together. There was also a really thorough MakerDAO ops report. So this was some user research around voters and people in the community and just individuals around MakerDAO. So if you're interested in reading it, definitely check out this link. But as you could see, this gentleman did a ton of surveys and got into the problems and goals that people think around the protocol, the actual structure of MakerDAO, proposed solutions for various issues that currently exist, some stuff on voting notifications, some stuff on participation rewards. So like he covers a ton of the most top of mind things around Maker. So it was a really great report. As some of you know, we are doing a source cred trial on the Maker forum. If you don't know what source cred is, it's a protocol that pretty much like pays people to participate in a system, but that's kind of like a cop out because there's obviously like, if you put it so simply, like there's ways to game those kinds of things, but source cred is a really innovative one that we've been testing on the forums. So we're actually in week 3 of DAI distributions. So every week we're distributing 1,250 DAI to basically the top contributors in the forum. And you can play around with these charts and with these numbers on the link that I provided here. So it's the hosted instance. And you could see pretty much everything from users' ratings, the amount of quote unquote cred that they receive for their participation. You could also check out which topics are actually resulting in the most cred generation. So like today, let's say, I think the liquidation one is like up top now. Yeah, either way. But yeah, here it is. Oh, wow. I guess this is spanning like the whole year, right? Yeah. So you can play around with it, but it's really interesting because source cred lets you like assign different weights to different actions. So if you were like the original poster for a thread that resulted in a governance change, you're going to receive like a proportionately larger amount of cred. And then if you commented on that thread and participated in the discussion, and like let's say your comment got a lot of likes, that also generates threads. If you didn't participate at all, but you liked a comment, that also produces a tiny little amount of cred. So it's a really interesting tool. But the more interesting thing about it is that you can actually configure it so that you reward certain topics or certain posts in the forum that have tags. So like let's say this month we're really focused on emergency shutdown, and we want to incentivize like people to think and work around emergency shutdown. So then in source cred, what you could do is you could assign like a slightly larger weight to the tag, emergency dash shutdown, and any threads that have that tag, the comments, the likes, everything in them is going to be like slightly amplified based on how you configure it. And it'll cause people to like go, like that's the theory, right? So this is really cool, I think, and it's definitely worth a 3-month experiment. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. But yeah, every Monday they post the DAI distributions, and of course you could see all of the stuff here. So there's also the whole forum thread that kind of talks about source cred in a way better way than I can. I only understand it kind of anecdotally and basically, but Dandelion Main and I think Ben and a few of the other people at the source cred team are totally awesome at answering people's questions and stuff like that. All right, cool. So then another thing, highlight from the community, we are at the community development department at the foundation, which is the department that I work for. We are sponsoring a Protect Privacy virtual hackathon along with several other organizations in the space. And we have a couple of different bounties. So if you're a developer and you're interested in winning some DAI, definitely help us because we are interested in a couple of things. So we're interested in privacy and payments. But for me, I'm most curious about the submissions for the second bounty, which is privacy in governance and voting. So that's going to be really interesting to see the results of. All right, moving on. A few different developer creations that I spotted this week. WBTC Cafe is a thing now. I didn't even know. Like that. Like this is so clean. You can just get WBTC. You can convert it to Ren. You can convert it back to regular BTC. It's like very clean interface. It's pretty useful for WBTC, so it's pretty exciting. Another thing, Wire released this feature called Wallet Pass, and I was reading about it like right before the call, so I hope I'm not butchering it. But the idea behind it is it's basically, well, actually, let me just read my points so I'm not like all over the place. So the question, like the thing they're trying to answer is this: how can we help teams sustain engagement and participation with token holders? Also, how do we do this in a way that's like ridiculously simple and privacy preserving and requires little to no information from users? So the way they do it is if you are using the Wire app, you're able to create, or even if you're not using it, you're able to create a wallet pass. So basically, you provide your wallet, and I think that's it. And you're able to get push notifications for like stuff that you are connected with. So like the first example they showed is a Maker Wallet Pass. So it lets you do a few things. So you get like push notifications about new votes that are up. Whether I think there's also stuff around vaults. So if your vault is coming close to liquidation, I think they might have notifications for that. But the other cool thing is that the Wallet Pass lets you top up your wallet using the Apple Pay widget that Wire has, which is really cool. So it makes like onboarding really easy. You could actually like create wallet passes for other people and like give them money if you're interested in. But of course, like I'm, I wish I had like a better visual representation or like maybe like a better way to explain and like practically convey to you guys how this works and gals how this works. But you'll just have to take this with a grain of salt. If you're interested, definitely read the blog. It helps explain it a little bit. And then the other thing that I wanted to shout out is that there was a vulnerability in the DeFi Saver exchange contract that has been found. So if you ever used the exchange at DeFi Saver, you're going to need to remove token approvals from your address in order to secure your account. And to do that, they put up a really easy domain. So go check it out, and it'll actually tell you if you're fine. So like if you're not sure, you could visit this domain, and if as long as your wallet is connected to MetaMask, or I believe they let you connect to like a ton of different options. Once you connect, it'll tell you if you need to do anything or if you don't. So pretty well done tool in terms of user experience. All right, so wrapping up, just a few more things. Articles. We saw that Maker was featured on the list for the World Economic Forum's Technology Pioneers of 2020. That was pretty cool. Some notable threads. There was a thread in the Maker Forum about bounties and grants to improve governance and the Maker protocol. And so the person in this thread actually suggested that we have kind of a one-stop place for people in the space looking for opportunities, how they can participate, and not only participate, but also like be compensated for the work that they're doing, whether it's hosting a meetup or building a governance dashboard or anything. And we have a few things that try to do this. Like we used to use Bounties Network for smaller grants. We have a help wanted section in the Maker Forum. We work individually with a lot of people to do DAI grants and to fund things that are happening in the MakerDAO ecosystem, especially around governance. So we are doing this, but we heard the feedback. Having a single place where you can kind of see everything is going to be super useful, and hopefully we can make that a reality soon. There's also a discussion thread about soft locks and future guidance, and I'm kind of shaky. Like I read through this. I'm a little bit shaky on 100% of the details, but definitely read through it. It has a lot to do with making the protocol more friendly towards mechanisms that provide like fixed rate type situations. So like vaults and MakerDAO are not fixed rate; they're variable rate, variable term. But there is going to be a whole slew of service providers and like mechanisms that are going to be built to offer fixed rate, fixed term products for users. And Akiva kind of lays out some of his ideas to help with that here. And one of the most active discussions in the last month has been this thread. It's a liquidation system redesign. So as a result of Black Thursday, a ton of thinking has been going into improving the Maker protocol's liquidation system. Right now, it functions on auctions. So there's 3 different auctions in the MakerDAO system, and one of them handles liquidations. It's called the collateral auction. But of course, there's ways to make it better. There's definitely considerations around how oracles would work with these different types of liquidation systems. And so, it's a really deep thread. It has a ton of really great feedback and discussion. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend that you give it a couple hours and read through it. A few videos I saw this week. They were all mainly presentations from a couple people from the foundation, Greg DePrisco and Mariano Conti. They spoke at the online conference called Mainnet 2020. There was one that gave a really great like 20-minute update on what's been going on with MakerDAO, like from like a very high view. And then also there was Mariano's like super famous story of Venezuela and Buenos Aires and Argentina kind of like needing crypto dollars and the rising demand of them in emerging markets. And then the last one was actually a panel. I think Robert Leshner was on there, Greg was on there, and a couple other people were on there talking about money Legos or money Jengas, structured finance. So definitely check those out. Pretty great videos to watch with your lunch. And so, lastly, also from the foundation, we revamped the website, so it's geared to be a little bit simpler, a lot more straightforward, like easier to understand. Like so it's meant to be as basic as possible, so that low barrier to entry for anybody that's looking into us. And then just one thing from the Maker blog. So also our Maker blog team has been working on just a number of blog posts that are really great for beginners, for people that are just getting onboarded into DeFi, that are just learning about DeFi. So this one article that we put out, blog post that we put out this week was "You've learned how to open a Maker Vault, now what?" And it talks a little bit about the DAI use cases after you open a vault. That's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward, but it talks a little bit about where to find places to spend DAI, where to find places to use DAI, and gives some suggestions and examples. All right, let me get back up here. I think I could stop sharing my screen now, and I could get back over here. So we have about 20 minutes left in the call. This week was a little bit less packed than previous weeks, but I'm happy to open it up to questions, discussion, or even to end it early if you guys would like. So totally open. Also, happy Tuesday. Can't believe it's already June 23rd. All right, so I'm not seeing anything in the chat. In that case, I'm happy to end it 20 minutes early today and give you guys a little bit of extra time on your busy Tuesdays. As usual, thank you for tuning in. I hope this was informative and interesting for you. I am experimenting constantly with the format of these calls. Oh yeah, and I mentioned that we were going to have a guest in the coming weeks. So actually, let me tell you who that will be. I believe it's going to be, we're going to have a few guests in the next month. One of them is going to be Maple Finance. So they do these things called smart bonds. And I think we're also going to have, I forget the name of Akiva's project, but Akiva is also going to come on and talk a little bit about the stuff him and his team have been building, also around like fixed rate loan products through DeFi using MakerDAO as infrastructure. Okay, I'm not finding my guests, unfortunately. Well, either way, I will post about it on Reddit, and so I believe that the Maple Finance guys are coming on July 7th, so in a couple of weeks. I believe next week is just going to be a regular community call. Oh, so Frank asks, what do you think is the hesitancy of MKR voters not participating this week? To be honest, I think it's gas prices. Like that's maybe like my number one thing that keeps me personally from like voting sometimes, especially on votes that I feel like I have absolutely no like strong opinions on, or if I know that they're going to be passed with like what I personally would vote for anyway, just like my MKR doesn't really make a difference. So like I might as well save that dollar in ETH that costs me to vote, right? And then for the votes that do matter to me, like I'll vote on those. But I definitely think it's the gas prices, in my opinion. What do you think? What do I think of the yield farms? Uh, yeah, I mean, yield farms are interesting. I like the I'm personally very hesitant to participate with like any real amount of money. Yes, let me finish my comment on yield farms. Yeah, so I would be hesitant to participate in yield farms with like any significant amount of money, just because um, it just God, how do I articulate it right? So at least for the people that are like doing like leveraged bat, like if like example leveraged bat, you take some bat, deposit it into compound, you borrow more bat from compound against your own deposited bat, and you like roll it in and you create like this crazy loop. Like the price action is not what's going to kill you, right? What's going to kill you is like the liquidity crunch, like the incoming liquidity. Everybody's going to want to be buying bats, close out their like really crazy looped up positions, and that's going to cause a liquidity crunch for bat. It might cause bat to skyrocket, and it might get a lot of people stuck in like this liquidity black hole with their position. And quite frankly, like I just don't understand the extent of the risks for the different ways that you could do yield farming. And because I don't personally understand those different risks, I'm not gonna do anything crazy. uh, but I do agree that yield farming is really interesting. That's one thing. I have a lot of reading to do ahead of me and a lot of learning. So Brian mentions that the executive contract doesn't make any actual code changes this week, so that might be a part of it as well. But it would be a shame if this governance if this executive vote didn't pass, because it includes all of the MIPS that have gone through the entire inclusion poll and governance poll cycles in the last 2 weeks. So it would be kind of sad to see MKR voters letting that executive vote die just because of no participation. Frank says, I also agree. Gas prices are too high. Whales can afford to vote, though. They must be busy yield farming. Yeah, maybe. Whales could definitely afford to vote. I mean, listen. $1, like a few dollars a week, makes sense for a whale, but for somebody that has like, let's say even like under 500 MKR, it like begins to not be worth it. All right, I'm going to hit the stop recording button in just a second, but actually, Peter, what do you think about yield farms? Do you want to come on the mic and talk a little bit about what you think about yield farming? Have you been doing any of that? So Peter, no mic. Okay, no worries. Yeah, it's crazy times we're living in, but wonderfully fascinating times. So with that, thank you guys for coming on the call this week and humoring me, and hopefully getting some value out of it. Yeah, Peter says he's not touching it. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's good to wait and see. It's never a bad thing, especially with new technology, and especially with like crazy new financial instruments and configurations. Brian says, all my bat and compound right now. That's my limit. It's not a bad limit. It's not a bad limit. I'm scared for the people that are doing like the crazy leveraged up positions. But anyway, happy Tuesday. See you guys next week.